evening, it's 8 o'clock. I'm Sally Burdett, live from Johannesburg. Your top stories this evening. A day of devastation in Durban. Torrential rains leave 32 people dead and hundreds homeless. Flooding in the Eastern Cape as well. A 12-year-old child has drowned in Mount Frere, and the Defence Force is heading to a flooded Port St John's. Meanwhile, with 2 weeks to go, electioneering continues, with two former leaders on the campaign trail and the spat between the DA and Patricia de Lille heading to the courts. It's been a devastating 24 hours in and around Durban. 32 people are confirmed dead in the province. In one particularly heartbreaking story, a family of 7, including 4 children, were killed in Malvern in the south of Durban when their house collapsed on them. Our reporter, Mawande Keshwa, starts our coverage this evening.
Severe downpours across KwaZulu-Natal have had tragic consequences.
From where we stand at the moment, we have reports of collapsed walls, mudslides, as well as roads that have been flooded. Parts of the province are also experiencing power failures due to the water and this extreme weather that we are experiencing.
The rain, which crushed homes and triggered mudslides, has claimed at least 23 lives in the Durban area alone. Over 30 have died province-wide, with the number expected to increase.
Most of the deaths are around the areas of Durban, including Charlesworth, Umlazi, New Germany, as well as the Pinetown.
Those affected are turning to government for assistance. The eThekwini Disaster Call Center received about 2,000 calls. One of them is from Nathi Mqadi, who has been living in Umlazi L section for 30 years. Like many others, he's left destitute.
Sinenkinga ngoba asazi ukuthi isola laphi. Njoba ubona nje idilika la ngaphansi siyasaba asasola laphi sinenkinga.
While government has deployed various teams to attend to the affected areas, the big question remains, what will happen when the rain comes down again? Mawande Keshwa, Durban.
After that heartbreaking story, a family of 7 killed when their house collapsed on them in south of Durban in the area known as Malvern. Our reporter Desin Thathia spent the day there and he spoke to some of the rescue workers who were retrieving bodies from the mud.
So we like in an advisory role and we're just assisting where we can, just when we can, and so we just need to do it. It needs to be done. We are being stretched and multiple units are...
Sorry to interrupt you, Gareth. Is this another body that has just been removed?
Yeah, that's correct. Two bodies have just been removed now. Second one will come out shortly.
Thank you very much. What you're seeing at the moment is another body that has been removed from this rubble. As you can understand, we won't get too close. But this is the kind of work that community members are also that they've been doing in Malvern, and that was where a total of 7 people were killed.
Well, many people are homeless this evening and being accommodated around Durban in various community halls. Let's go live now to Umlazi, and our reporter Tsecho Hajo Moahi is in the area, joins us live this evening. Good evening to you, Tsecho. Thanks so much for joining us. I can see behind you a lot of people. I presume these are people who've lost their homes. What is being done to help them through this evening?
Absolutely. Good evening, Sally. So what is being done here in Umlazi? We're at a community hall here in the area. And what is then being done for the people that have lost their homes and that are displaced? Some of them, Sally, I must mention, I have been informed that they are not necessarily displaced or that that they've not lost their homes, but it's just that their homes are severely damaged and they cannot be spending the night there. They will then be spending the evening here, and then they'll be, of course, be helped to restore their lives and to restore the path now going into what has now happened happened in KZN over this past night, over yesterday and some of this morning. So the people that are here, we're expecting about 24 or 25 people here, Sally, to actually be spending the night here. But I have heard that some of them are reluctant to actually be sleeping in this community hall because they fear that some of their things could be stolen at their homes, and they're just wondering if this could actually be a safe option.
Now, what about the rains? We have heard there could be more localised flooding. What are you hearing about the risk of more flooding overnight in the Durban area?
Well, Sally, as we were driving in actually into Durban, you could see very dark clouds that had surrounded this particular Durban area. But it has now cleared, so we are aware from the Weather Service that there won't be much. There is rain that was expected tonight, but not much has actually fallen as yet. And as for tomorrow, about 30% or so is expected to fall in the Durban area. But that is not much to cause much severity and to cause any form of floods actually within this particular area. So the rainfall is expected, but we're not quite sure if there will be any that will fall tonight.
Thank you very much. That's our reporter in Umlazi, Sekhohajo Moahi. Well, the Eastern Cape too has been affected by heavy rains. The first confirmed death in that province, a 12-year-old child who drowned in Mount Frere. The worst flooding in the Eastern Cape is the coastal village of Port St John's. Many people have had to be evacuated from their homes. The SANDF is going in to assist. Our reporter Zikona Chona is in Port St John's. She spoke earlier to the mayor.
As far as we understand, at least 300 people have been affected. They are now being accommodated at the local town hall, and authorities have told us that they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that people are evacuated out of safety into that town hall. So behind me is Greens Farm, where people have left their homes. A lot of them are mud structures, so very unsafe for them to be in. We spoke to one resident earlier who said that she tried to save whatever she can, but she has lost everything. School children have lost books. People's food has been damaged. There's a spaza shop behind me. The owner of that spaza shop also spoke to us saying he's lost some of his stock. So certainly a very worrying situation here in Port St John's, but authorities saying that they're doing everything they can to make sure that everyone is safe.
Well, elections are just 2 weeks away. Campaigning is intensifying. Today, 2 former party leaders came out of hibernation and into the spotlight. Former President Thabo Mbeki was at the Rand Show, and DA former leader Tony Leon was in Eldorado Park. Mbeki gave a strong endorsement for President Cyril Ramaphosa, while Leon acknowledged voters might punish the DA over the De Lille saga.
So you say, why now? Why do I do this? It's because there was a period when I could not personally, in all honesty, come and say to a person, David, please vote for the ANC, knowing very well the wrong things that were happening.
You have to say the De Lille saga in the DA, which I think was disruptive, is nothing compared to what goes on in the ANC, which is riddled with corrupt, crooked, chancy characters who it can't even get rid of.
Well, that spat between the DA and Patricia de Lille is not over. It's heading now for the courts. The DA is challenging the IEC decision that the party must apologise to her. The dispute revolves around whether the DA actually fired de Lille or whether she resigned and walked away. Both Musi Maimane and de Lille spoke on the issue today.
Look, for us, we've taken the matter on review with the IEC. The question is about fired or not fired. That's the question. We are challenging. When you say someone was fired, we are challenging the very essence of that because it's important. And the IEC cannot be making arbitrary judgments of that nature.
I've got the evidence to prove that I was not fired by the DA. I've got a High Court decision that found in the attempt of the DA to fire me, they didn't follow due process. So they are absolutely a bunch of blue liars.
In other stories, a new walkway was unveiled at Hoërskool Driehoek in Vanderbijl Park today. In February, the concrete slab collapsed, killing 4 pupils and injuring many others. The Gauteng Education Department says it is not opposing any legal action linked to the tragedy. Cape Town police have made a breakthrough in a suspected arson case at the Cape Town railway station. Multiple trains and coaches were gutted by a fire on Easter Sunday. Now, according to police, a 30-year-old Khayelitsha man has been detained after being nabbed by passenger rail agency officials. The damage to the trains is estimated at 33 million rand. Passengers are already feeling the effects with fewer trains operating as a result of the blaze. Police aren't ruling out the possibility of more arrests. And still ahead on eNews.
I don't know what to do. And I was just saw my daughter on the floor.
Sri Lanka in mourning. Families bury their loved ones after the deadly Easter Sunday bombings. ISIS has now claimed responsibility for the attacks.
And in your business news, the rand was weaker today, mainly driven by that news that government has given more money to Eskom.
Time for business news with Rafiwa Madzena. Good evening to you. And we're talking Eskom. Over the weekend, we heard the China Development Bank money had not come through in time and Treasury had to bail out, dipping into this emergency fund, which is supposed to be for emergencies like, say, for example, flooding. They had to bail Eskom out. And now the ratings agencies are concerned.
Exactly, Sally. So as you say, they dipped into some emergency funding to get Eskom out. The maximum, according to the Public Finance and Management Act, that they can take is about 2% of our national budget. So they've taken that full 2%, which is about 17 billion rand. The first 5 billion has been given to Eskom to operate. So Eskom has highlighted that the reason they needed this money immediately was that they no longer had operating capital. Now this is worrying, and the ratings agencies are watching very closely because they have warned on various occasions that our fiscal health depends on us stopping bailing out these state-owned entities, and that doesn't seem like it's going to happen. The interesting thing, though, is that our Minister of Public Enterprise, Pravin Gordhan, has come out to say that Eskom is not bankrupt. But this is so it's very interesting information that we're getting out here. And one economist has highlighted whether it's a little bit of politicking, whether we really don't understand or know the length of the crisis at Eskom, something which you might find out after the elections, or maybe if it's just a matter of getting the right management in place to manage the fund, Sally. But either way, the ratings agencies aren't impressed, and the fiscal pressure on our national budget, as well as prospects for GDP growth, are really dire at this state.
And I would imagine that uncertainty is not good for the markets. How did they do today?
Absolutely not. So it was a little bit of a whirlwind on the local markets today. So I mean, that coupled with the rising oil price as well as the weaker rand put pressure on the JSE's interest rate sensitive stocks. The banks and the retailers fared the worst, while the rising oil price boosted Sasol and some of your other miners. On the commodities front, gold prices inched back towards that last week's 4-month low as appetite for riskier assets gained some momentum. Meanwhile, Brent crude hit a 2019 high today, and that's after US President Donald Trump surprised the market with strict new measures aimed at reducing Iran's oil exports to zero. If we take a look at the local unit now, the rand came under some pressure after it came out that government has been dipping into the emergency fund to bail Eskom out once again.
Thank you very much for all that market news, Rafiwa Madzena. Well, let's move now to international news. Now, the Islamic State is claiming responsibility for the Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka. Over 300 people were killed, 500 more wounded. Now, officials believe the bombings are in retaliation for attacks on mosques in New Zealand. According to the Reuters news agency, India warned intelligence officials hours earlier that attacks by Islamists were imminent. The FBI is assisting authorities in Colombo to find the perpetrators. Now, an Australian survivor who lost his wife and daughter in the blasts has recounted the moment the bomb went off.
I went with my daughter and wife, and I also inside the church at that time. And it's the end of the ceremony, and I just walk outside. And in 5 minutes' time, there's a bomb blast. I heard about the huge noise. Then I jumped into the church, and I saw that my daughter and my wife was on the floor. I don't know what to do.
Ahead, we'll go to the weather centre. Joel's standing by. Of course, weather a big topic this evening. We'll get all the details. And then, it's more than just a gigantic bread roll. It's actually a topic of an academic study. Yes, it is. We'll tell you all about Cape Town's signature super sandwich, the Gatsby. Let's get your weather news now with Joel Guy in Cape Town. Joel, of course, we're all desperately worried about the possibility of more flooding.
Oh, yes, indeed, Sally. I'll quickly show you the most recent satellite picture. We had very heavy rains falling across KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. And these clouds you see here are because of a cut-off flow that is steering tropical air into the central and southern parts of the country, as well as rain-bearing clouds creeping into KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. Now, in the past 4 or so days, we had very heavy rains. The bulk of the rain fell overnight on Sunday into Monday morning. You can see the rainfall totals recorded over parts of the East Coast. Look at Durban recording around 210 millimeters to 2 o'clock this afternoon. Heavier rains around the Paddock area. And Port St. John's, which also suffered some flooding, recorded around 255 millimeters. Now, we're going to get into Wednesday with rain and thunder showers persisting all the way from the northwest down into the southeastern areas and also into parts of the Western Cape. But the good news is that things are going to get drier as we get into Wednesday night with just isolated showers over the eastern escarpment areas. Now, here's taking it closer to your part of the country. It's going to be mostly sunny and mild to warm on Wednesday for much of the Northern Cape. Just a few sprinkles in the morning around DR and Colesbeck with highs in the lower 20s. Then in the Western Cape, it's going to be mostly dry with Cape Town, mostly sunny, warming to 24 degrees. But further east, we will see isolated rain and thunder showers, especially for the first half of the day. Top temperatures here lying mostly in the lower 20s. Then in the Eastern Cape, isolated to scattered thunderstorms are forecast, and it's going to stay mild for the province. Fairly wet as well for parts of KwaZulu-Natal with a chance of heavy rains for the south coast. Durban warming to around 26 degrees. Mpumalanga is going to see isolated thundershowers, light rain around Mbombela. Then in Limpopo, it's going to be largely dry with partly cloudy skies in most areas, and it's going to get drier as we head towards the end of the week. That's all from the Weather Centre for now. Back to you.
Thank you very much. That's Joel Guy in Cape Town. And finally, the humble Gatsby, a Cape Townian culinary favourite, has been turned into a topic of an academic study. Tanya Neft finds out whether the proof of the pudding is indeed in the eating.
Iconic fast food joints like this have become part of Cape Town's DNA. Miriam's is just one of those places that over decades have mastered the art of the famous monster cholesterol-laden takeaway, the Gatsby.
Everybody eats it. Executive to everybody enjoy this meal.
For some, this may seem like a carb overload, but for most Cape Townians, this monster sandwich has become an institution on its own.
And Masters graduate Tasneem Wenzel is proof of just that. She's used a love of history and food as the basis of her thesis. It centers around the evolution of Cape Town's signature super sandwich. Her research delves into the dish's political history and culinary heritage.
I chose to write about the Gatsby and the Whopper because these are things that I grew up with, this is things that I'm familiar with, and I thought it would be also quite fun to see what is the history about these food forms that we consume quite often.
So next time you order a fully loaded Gatsby, know that you're savoring on more than just a gigantic bread roll. Tanya Neft, Cape Town.
Wow, and with that, I'll say goodnight.